So friends, good afternoon to all. I will be today talking about the global vegetation indices, vegetation studies and wildlife studies, how remote sensing GIS can be applicable to this kind of studies. And I am actually working in the Center for Natural Resource Management, Climate Change, Disaster Mitigation, which is a kind of a center under School of Sustainable Development of National Institute of Rural Development and Panchayati Raj. Which is an apex institute of Ministry of Rural Development, which is situated in Hyderabad. And also we have our regional center in NERC, that is in Guwahati. And also we have around 29 state institute of rural development in each states. In Maharashtra, we have a unit, our SID unit in Yashoda. There is no independent campus for that. But in Goa, we have an independent campus for our SIRD. And also we have our 96 extension training center throughout the India. So this is what we actually do, and we do research related to water resource management basically recently, and also related to climate change, disaster mitigation, etc. So friends, today I will be also helped by one of my students. Dr. Wasim Bhagwan is there. He is my student. He will be also helping me out to show you the demonstrations. Because I'm a little bit tight with the schedule. I have to leave at around 3 p.m. for another meeting. So I will try to finish it up and try to hand over the session to Dr. Wasim Bhagwan, who will be also talking about he will show the demonstration how to use this kind of indices. So friend, I know that it's an online training program, and you have been attending this program from your home or from your office. And it was supposed to be held at Goa. So I know that you've not been able to come to Goa, but I'm trying to show you Goa on a map. So see how beautifully the map has been put up for Goa. How many of you have visited Goa actually? From the participants, how many of you visited Goa? Yeah, Kamarpreet Singh raised his hand. It says that he has visited Goa. That's good. But for those who have not visited Goa, I'm just showing you the map of Goa. It's a GIS map of Goa. We talk about the land use change in Goa, which has happened over the years. That is from, if you take a point of 1985 to 2006, what changes have occurred. And based on that, they have projected what changes could happen in Goa as far as land use change is concerned for the year 2027. Okay. So if you see this map, GIS map, it's a kind of prediction map, how beautifully it is made. And it's a kind of prediction which they made in the year 2010 about taking the point from the change which happened in from 1985 to 2006. Yeah. So, so if you see this map, please watch this map carefully, because I'm going to take you to another map. This is another map, which is a recent map, forest map of Goa. See how beautifully the different forest types have been mentioned over here. And each and every thing is so precise over here. Just you click on one of the locations, a point over here, any kind of coordinate over here, you can zoom it and you can see what kind of area it has, what kind of vegetation it has. So if you see, there is not much change. It is the year 2021. So what this P.S. Roy and Rajit have predicted in 2010, which is almost similar to 2021 now. So this is how it's powerful the tool is of remote sensing and GIS. That's what I want to try to project you here. So if you want to really do something, this kind of studies, definitely I will be helping you out with this session, how we can manage this kind of data through remote sensing and GIS. And I hope so. Okay, तो गोवा का ट्रिप हो गया, अभी गोवा पहुंच गए हम लोग, अभी आगे बढ़ते हैं. So this is a global photosynthetic activity map, where it shows that how the photosynthetic activity is occurring throughout the world, which is taken from NOAA. Is a NOAA data, and it shows the perennial and seasonal photosynthetic activity. So if you see the dark black spot or gray spot, there is no or almost nil photosynthetic activity. The rest of the photosynthetic activity is happening all throughout the world. So how beautifully it is in projected, you can see. And in fact, this data can be created seasonally on seasonal basis, and we can see how the vegetation or the photosynthetic activity is happening. In fact, and current time on data also can be fed up, and this kind of activity can be projected. So this is something on a beauty what we can have. We have a lot of tools related to vegetation mapping. So let us see what those tools can be and how the vegetation is mapped. So why we need to map vegetation? First of all, we need to understand that we have a lot of different species and community distribution. They cover on the entire globe, especially the land. And we need to know what kind of species are there, what kind of vegetation it encompasses. And also we will need to estimate the biodiversity in those areas. So in this regard, if you try to go physically mapping this and try to physically study, those who are from botany or from ecology background or environmental science, they know that how tedious the job it is. So if you want to do this in a quick estimate and with a good reliable data, then I think remote sensing is the answer to it. That's why we need to have study this kind of thing for remote sensing. It has opened a very wide vista for such kind of studies. And if you see the phenological growth cycles, we need to know how different seasons, what kind of plants come up in different seasons, and especially in the agriculture area. So different phenological cycles of the crops can be studied through remote sensing. So that is also one of the beauty of the GIS, which has remote sensing, which has come up in the through these years. So that's why it is also very important. Then we also have kind of inspection about the health status about the vegetation, whether the vegetation is under some stress, like whether the vegetation is having a moisture stress, or it has some stress related to some kind of deficiency of minerals, or it could be a disease something. So it is like an early warning system which can be helped, which can be this data can be used for an early warning system. And then we also like to know some of the temporal changes which is happening, just as change detection, which I showed you in the map of Goa. So we can know the change what has happened over the years, and also how the vegetation will be there, what kind of vegetation will be there in future. So using the various climatic data. So many of the time people use the world climate data, which is available. We can freely download and use this for your all climate related modeling. Even you can use these AOGCS models associated to that. So a lot of models are there. You can download. It depends on what you want to do and exactly how much effort you want to take up doing such kind of studies. So vegetation is attributes. What the attributes can be used, you can see. So some of the vegetation attributes could be like photosynthesis. As I told you, it's a very important activities, because of the photosynthesis, because of the presence of the chlorophyll in the mesophyll cell structure of a plant leaf, we get a specific kind of reflectance from it. So photosynthesis is very important activity. Then pigmentation. Plants have a different pigmentation in the leaves, so they also have their own reflectance and reflectance signature. Leaf structure is also very important over here. So for example, leaf area index can be deducted to this. So leaf structure is very important, what kind of reflectance could be there. And plant water content, that is moisture content, canopy structure, it tells about the extent the density of the forest is that area, and whether it's open forest, scrub forest, or what kind of forest type it is from. Then also we have phenological cycles, which shows the various stages of development or growth of vegetation. These are the major attributes which can be we used for our remote sensing GIS studies. So photosynthesis spectral characteristics, if you want to, as I pointed out earlier. So energy stored in plant, which is powered by light absorption by leaves. This is because of the chlorophyll. There are chlorophyll A, B, then xanthophyll C, chlorophyll. The different chlorophylls are there. So they actually, reflect in a different kind of signature from plants. So that's why, it's basically because of the photosynthetic activity, plants are able to store energy in their leaves and also in the body. So this is how we will look into. So different leaf structures and which perform the photosynthesis with different kind of pigmentation. They have different kind of interactions, various kind of interaction with the electromagnetic energy, and which has the direct impact on the spectral characteristics. That means what kind of reflectance signature they will be producing after the absorption of light. So this is a cross section of a leaf. There are two diagrams given over here. The upper diagram is a kind of a diagram which is a drawn over diagram, and the lower one is the B diagram, is the actual how the leaf looks under the microscope. So if you see the leaf structure, there are different kind of tissues and cells in that, and so just imagine, so each kind of entity in this leaf have a different kind of absorption and reflectance. But here what we are going to focus is the mesophyll cell, which actually harbor the chlorophylls inside it. The spongy mesophyll parama we are going to target over here. We are going to study the signature from this, because it not only gives the kind of health status of the plant, but also it gives the kind of density of the vegetation, because every leaves have a kind of this kind of spongy parenchyma mesophyll cell. So we are going to target this as far as nature is concerned. So if you see the plants, then most of the mesophyll, this spongy mesophyll cell, as we are going to see, that it will be our target for getting the reflectance and signature. So they actually reflect in the or scatter in the area of infrared, as near infrared area. So most of the reflectance which comes from the near infrared area, and this layer is composed of also cells and air spaces. So a lot of scattering also takes place inside. So that means we had to go for a specific signature, isn't it? Otherwise, scattering takes place. It may form a kind of a background noise for that kind of reflectance coming out from the leaf surface. So this is the chart. Please try to observe this chart very carefully. If you see the kind of reflectance which comes up in the visible area, blue-green area, these are the areas where chlorophyll absorption bands are there. These are the chlorophyll, and along with the different pigments, palisade, mesophyll, chlorophyll A, B, beta carotene, etc. So if you see the most of the reflectance which is coming up is in the area of near infrared. There is a peak here in near infrared region. So it's a kind of hunch is there immediately from the area related to 0.7 to near to 1.2 micrometer of wavelength. So here a lot of reflectance takes place. Then another reflected area is in the middle infrared region. It is from which is from near around 1.6 to 1.8. Then there is another reflectance peak which is coming in the area of 2.2. So these are the different areas where the reflectance can be taken up. But we are more concerned here as per the vegetation in the near infrared region. But if you go for the middle infrared region, definitely we will get some information related to water content in the mesophyll tissue. Okay, so that will be used as a indicator for health status of the plant. So this is how the reflectance system work in the leaf or for the plants. This is one of the typical signature of a blue stem grass, which is a big grass usually found in the temperate regions of Canada and USA. So here, how you can see the reflectance. Again, the reflectance is there, the near infrared region, and also a little bit reflectance is there in the visible, which is the green color, which is more reflected. And after that, the reflectance, there is a kind of flat peak is there. It's a tableland kind of reflectance, which is shown in the near infrared region. Okay, so this is how the signature for the a typical blue stem grass looks like. So similarly for different type of grass species and different type of vegetation, we have a unique signature associated to them. So by signature, this is very typical because not only the reflectance in the near and middle infrared, but also because of the scattering which occurs because of the foliage of vegetation. Because you know that vegetation grows in a foliage in like a canopy structure. So under the leaf you have another leaf. Over that leaf you may have another leaf. So this kind of things takes place. A lot of scattering takes place. A lot of corrections has to be taken up when we use this data. When we take this data, remote sensing data from any satellite band. So we had to do a lot of corrections related to a lot of adjustments has to take place. Now the software is so much equipped to that you can easily do it by one command. So this is the another spectral signature, which is a very high resolution data, not spatial resolution, but highly high. This is what is called high spectral resolution data. It's a very high spectral resolution data. So of Aviris, which has around 224 channels of 1 nanometer wide. Yeah, any somebody want to say something? Okay, it was disturbance, I think. Okay, I will continue then. Thank you. So, am I audible to you all?
Yes, sir. Everything is okay. No problem.
Oh, okay,
Yes.
fine. Thank you. So this is a typical signature which is given by different kind of grasses and crops which has been grown. So you can see each kind of plant has a different kind of signature over here. Although the reflectance pattern is same. Like for example, there is a high peak reflectance in the near infrared region, and also another peak in the middle infrared region. So this is how the pattern looks like. So if you see the as a vegetation as a whole, like a pasture or a kind of agriculture field as a bare field, the same kind of almost similar signature is there. So even the bare field where is no vegetation, there is also a flat signature over the near infrared and the middle infrared region. Bare field has a flat signature. So this is how the things look like. So just I want to convince you that yes, different kind of vegetation, different kind of species have a different kind of reflectance that we call it that own signatures, spectral signature. If you see vegetation indices, we need to study this kind of signature in the format of certain vegetation indices, so that we can quantify these kind of signatures for our further studies. So basically, what happens, you see, vegetation indices they have a kind of mathematical computations which show the reflectance. So if you see in this diagram, I want to show that most of the reflectance is in the near infrared region, and visible in the reflection red region is very less, that is 8%. This how it is there. And if you see the near unhealthy vegetation, then there is a less reflection in the infrared region, and visible reflection in the red region is more as compared to the healthy vegetation. So this is how we differentiate healthy and unhealthy vegetation. So that's why we need kind of vegetation indices to calculate such kind of health information or information which can be deciphered from the vegetation. So if you see there, we actually make use of this comparison between red and near infrared. That's basically as I told you. So our data basically will be playing between the red reflectance and near infrared region. The ratio of this red and near infrared reflections is going to decide the kind of vegetation we going to have, or we are going to decipher from the remote sensing data. So here you can see the reflectance from the red and near infrared region. So that means in the Landsat data, the data which is taken from the red region, that is from the band 3 and band 4 is taken over here. So this is how the signature looks like for green vegetation, for water and soil. So this is what we do. So for this we have a kind of index which is normally used for all vegetation calculations, which is called normalized difference vegetation index. And this has advantage that it allows you to compare between images acquired at different times. because different times different imageries will have different kind of ratio of this NDVI. So the ratio of NDVI is very important. That is the ratio. This basically is the ratio between the red and the near infrared difference. So here is the formula which is used. If you see, it is the difference between near infrared and red divided by the product, the summation of near infrared and red. So this is how it looks like. So the healthy vegetation have a high NDVI value because definitely when we get more reflectance from the near infrared as compared to visible, definitely the vegetation should be healthy. But and also in the stressed and sparse vegetation, it produces the lower NDVI. Bare rock soil NDVI is near zero because they don't have any vegetation there, no chlorophyll, no mesophyll cells are there. Then snow produces negative values of NDVI, and clouds produce low to negative values of NDVI. Okay, so these are the different spectral signatures we can have. So here is a comparison I have given here, where there is a calculation given over here, 0.72, 0.72, and 0.14. So 0.72 is in the area of high value for NDVI, so it is a kind of healthy vegetation. So for a unhealthy vegetation, we have 0.14 reflectance. So this is how the things look like. Okay, so this is how we trying to decipher from the vegetation. So NDVI is very important for such kind of studies. And also, apart from NDVI, we also have another index we study, which is also a kind of product of or extended product of NDVI only. It is called VCI, that is Vegetation Condition Index, and it expressed given in the percentage, and which gives an idea about the observed value is situated between the extreme value, maximum, minimum. That means what it does basically is that it compares the NDVI values which is reflected by the plant species from a different season at the same time. For example, take a example of crop or vegetation in the month of May. So the month of May or June, when the monsoon is going to fall, what kind of vegetation is there last year? We compare the same data for reflectance for this coming year. So we can decipher whether the area is undergoing of any drought or any kind of moisture stress. Basically, it shows the moisture stress. This is basically calculation showing the moisture stress, and that is how this kind of different percentage categories can be there from extreme to very light, and also we can further categorize into extreme drought to no drought regions. This kind of VCI is very useful for the drought management or drought kind of studies, which is also very important. Another thing is the agriculture, where also we need a kind of different temporal data. So we also need to use VCI and also other indices also. So basically, we use the vegetation condition index along with the moisture condition index or the thermal condition index. So basically, the VCI is also sometimes called as MCI, that is moisture condition index, and also we have thermal condition index also. So both the product of VCI or the MCI along with the thermal condition index give the vegetation health index, that is called VHI. So this VHI is also commonly used for the cropping plants, usually in the agriculture sector, where it shows the stress because of the temperature and also because that when the temperature rises, a lot of evaporation should take place. So this is how it been shown. So different seasons or different months can have a different kind of reflectance over the time. So this is something the beauty of the remote sensing which we can be used over here. This is the MODIS data. I think there are some people who are trying to enter and they're in the waiting room. My screen is being disturbed because of those people are joining in. Can you please admit those people, Dr. Gaikwad?
Yes, sir. Admitted.
Yeah, yeah. Because what happens, it directly comes in the middle of the screen. Yeah.
Because you are also the host, no?
Yeah.
Either you or me, anyone can admit it.
Okay, so should I admit that?
Yes, you can also admit, because sometimes I'm processing the data of the day, no? So there I may look and then I just forget to look at the screen. Okay, sir, continue, no problem.
Fine. So a MODIS is a kind of sensor which is put up in different satellites over the years. It is called a moderate resolution imaging spectrophotometer. It is the sensor which is used for studying the vegetation at the global scale and sometimes also at the regional scales also. So this is how the MODIS data looks like when you convert it into a false color composite. Then now recently from the year 2012, there is another data sensor which has been come up for this kind of studies. That is called VIIRS. Virus it? Yeah, VIIRS it is called. So if you can Google it, you can find this kind of data sets also, which is more what do you call? Which has got more or higher bandwidth, and also it has got higher resolution also. When I'm talking about resolution, not spatial resolution, I'm also talking about the spectral resolution. So this is how the NDVI can be put under a very high resolution radiometer. When we use the very high resolution radiometer, this is how the NDVI data can be looked to for the globe. So very precise studies can be taken up at very large scale, although the accuracy is also very good at local scale. So this is another NDVI study which is shown over here. This is how it looks like for USA. Then when we use this NDVI, we need to have certain limitations, and we should be cautious about using that. Like for example, sometimes there is oversaturation when the dense vegetation is there. So during that time, we had to be very careful. We had to take multiple scale or multi-temporal data for that. Otherwise, this oversaturation will definitely result into a false signaling sometimes. Not false signaling, it can kind of error in the calculations. So, and also we have less information for the original data. Then secondly, any factor that is unevenly influenced by red and NIR reflectance will influence the NDVI, obviously, because as I told you, we are basically looking at with the ratio of red and near infrared reflectance. So definitely anything which is going to influence that, such as atmospheric path radiance, soil wetness, etc., they may interfere with the NDVI value. So that means we need to have certain corrections methods could be applied, and we need to have proper ground truthing is also required over here. If you don't get proper ground truthing with good spectral data, nowadays people have their own handheld spectroradiometers, which takes the immediate data from the ground. We take the spectral signature from the ground, and they match the same spectral signature from the remote sensing data. So that is what people are recently doing to avoid such kind of errors and inaccuracies. Then also there are derivatives of NDVI, such as called leaf area index, which is not physical quantities, but it is actually derived from NDVI. So in that also we need to be very cautious, because once our NDVI has a lot of errors into it and we are not refined that error, then definitely our leaf area index will definitely have more error as compared to the NDVI. So we have to be very careful. Here I given just a point over here. What leaf area index is a key variable functionally related to plant biomass production. Alternately, NDVI vegetation index is as widely used. Spectral reflectance index has been shown to be a good estimator for LI, and that is what it says that for LI can be derived from NDVI. Most of the people are doing such kind of things. So other vegetation indexes also there. There are many other. I am just putting up some of the important vegetation indexes. One is the soil adjusted vegetation indexes. As I told you, moisture in the soil can also interfere in the red and the near infrared region. So that is why we have a soil adjusted vegetation indices, that is called SAVI. Soil and atmospherically resistant vegetation indices, because it will also correct the atmospheric errors. Then we have moisture stress index. How much moisture is there? It is similar to what is called VCI, vegetation condition index. Then global monitoring environmental index is also there, GME, which is used at the larger scale studies which have a regular interval data. Then we have enhanced vegetation index. Enhanced vegetation index is basically a more corrected or more refined NDVI calculation. So this is called enhanced vegetation index. The formula is almost similar to NDVI, but they have corrected over here, because now they have included not only the reflectance ratios from the red and infrared, but also reflectance in the blue channel. And also they have atmospheric resistance coefficient attached to it. Then they also get canopy background correction factor also. Gain factor is also attached to it. So that is why a lot of corrections have taken place, and we get a very good and very purified, or we can refined vegetation index, that is called EVI. So mostly nowadays people use EVI instead of NDVI, because it compensates the atmospheric and soil effects which may occur or interfere with the NDVI. So EVI is a modified NDVI, and the EVI has improved sensitivity to high biomass region. Basically, as I told you, when there is high biomass region, high dense forest regions are there, the EVI will be giving more effective or more correct data as per normal NDI is concerned. This is how it looks to. So this is a slide comparison I'm going to show you. There is a comparison between NDVI and EVI. What is the difference? So can you notice something difference over here, participants? Anybody want to point out some difference over here? Can you see what difference it makes?
I think, sir, upper one is most precise.
Upper one is NDVI, and EVI is a lower one.
NDVI is more precisely showing the data. So there are some differences in classes.
Okay, but what our assumption is that we have an enhanced vegetation index. It should be more accurate than NDVI, isn't it?
Yeah, yes, sir. Yeah.
So what do you think? See, that means most of the area which was showing dense vegetation as a dark green color, and also some of the area it is not shown in NDVI. That means that there was an overestimation of NDVI value, isn't it? So that has been corrected because of EVI, isn't it? Can we agree to that?
Yeah, definitely, sir.
Yeah. Okay. So this is how the EVI helps it to have more accurate data and more correct data, especially when we have chances of atmospheric interference, chances of soil interferences, especially moisture content in the soil, because many of the times moisture content in the soil may also result into different, they have different algae attached to it. Maybe they have reflectance more in the mid and infrared region also. So, and also, yeah, please.
Hello, sir. So we can use EVI rather than NDVI, right?
Yeah, it depends.
More useful.
Yeah, more is, yeah, definitely. When we have to segregate the vegetation into different components, the more we narrow down more, or we do resolve downwards, or we want to define more vegetation, different kind of more components or more species, then I think EVIs will be more useful, isn't it?
Okay.
So, there are different products created out of the vegetation index. Vegetation index there from MODIS 13 sensor. Land cover can be acquired from the MODIS 12 number sensor. Vegetation cover conversion is there. Vegetation continuous field percentage, woody vegetation, herbaceous cover vegetation, background cover, phenology, then leaf area index, net primary productivity, fraction of observed photosynthetic active region. These are the all refined data which we get. Otherwise, what happens usually, we have to get this data and we have to process and refine this data as per our requirement. So already you get a ready-made refined data where, for example, if you want to study the phenology, definitely you can go for the MODIS 12Q2 sensor data. It will definitely show you the good way phenology and more refined, and more corrections will be, or you can say ready-made corrected or more refined data is provided to you, isn't it? So this is how we look for the products, different products when we want to study vegetation. So different products are available. Then middle spongy mesophyll, as I told you, it has a role because it also have a certain kind of reflectance in the middle infrared region because of the moisture present in the cell. So here, why we can exploit this kind of middle infrared reflectance from the leaf to monitor the plant water stress. So it is very important over here. So here, this is very important. So if you see this kind of kind of example where same species is there, Magnolia grandiflora reflectance is given. See how the reflectance changes although the signature is same, but the peaks are a little bit different. You can see, especially just observe in the middle infrared region. That is from the 1.5 to 1.9 in that region, micrometer. You see how the reflectance changes over here. So depending on the moisture content, whether it is a moisture content 100% to 5%, 5% is a bare ground, almost dried up vegetation. So 100% to 25% vegetation, you can see how the variation in the signature we get it, reflectance. So this is how we know this middle infrared region band is very important for the moisture stress studies. See, this is how we study a stress in any kind of, this is the example of a cotton field, irrigated cotton field. This is a thermal image. So thermal emission can be used for derive this temperature of a crop. Thermal emissions, I'm talking about the middle infrared region. So as the water transpires from the plants, the leaves are cooled. So definitely when the leaves are cooled, the color is different. So blue, you get a blue color for that, and when the leaves are not cooled, red color warmer, you get a kind of red color for that. So this shows a typical in a single field also different plants are undergoing the same crop, but different plants are going under different moisture level of stresses. See over there. So that means the field is not uniformly irrigated, isn't it? So this is how the information can be used up. This is another example of aquatic plant. So aquatic.
Hello, sir.
Yeah.
Sir,
Yes,
one
please.
question from the previous slide.
Yeah.
So can we use this type of images, I mean thermal emission type of in forest fire condition?
Yeah, definitely. You can definitely use it. Yes, it will be a good indicator. But forest fire actually, gives a very high reflectance. Ultimately there is a high reflectance over there. So you need not have to,
So the differences will be more.
Yeah.
Okay.
Obviously, that's true. That's true. So immersed aquatic plants absorb solar energy and emit thermal radiation that is warmer from the surrounding area. That's why if you see the aquatic plant body can also be detected over here because of the thermal imagery. Thermal imagery, I'm talking about middle infrared reflectance. So actually, when the near infrared region bands were not very precise and earlier satellites, that's why we call it Landsat TM images. Yeah. So that's what at that time middle infrared region spectrum was there, but near infrared region was very strong. But now we have spectrums and the sensors in both the regions, all over the regions. Now we can take up. So this is how it can be detected. So then if you see there are angular reflectance which is coming up from the vegetation. As I told you, when we have a canopy structure, a kind of dense vegetation, we got, apart from the reflectance coming out from a particular leaf, we also get reflectance from different leaves which may be scattered or may be re-reflected within the canopy itself. So this kind of scattering leads a lot of anisotropic reflectance, which depends on the leaf shape, canopy height, vegetation density, etc. And also it is reflected as bidirectional reflectance distribution function, which has to be corrected and which has to be refined when we use such kind of data. So nowadays there are a lot of different softwares are there, they can be used, but this drawback of this kind of disturbance can be used LIDAR mapping. So this is LIDAR waveform function we show. LIDAR, you can use this kind of disturbance as our tool. We can use it because it gives a precise internal reflectance studies. Those internal reflectance can be captured under the LIDAR sensors, and that's why we can get the depth of the canopy height, the height of the trees in the plant, and what lies below the trees. This kind of density of vegetation can be more precisely studied in kind of this LIDAR studies. So nowadays people conduct a lot of LIDAR studies. They also fly the drones, and they have LIDAR sensors also attached to it. They also correct the data easily, readily can be captured. So this is something very good. Then we have phenological cycles. So we went to study phenological cycles. Why? Because more of the time we use these phenological cycles for the agriculture crops. So it gives a temporal characteristic of vegetation growth. So different seasons, what different vegetation can be grown up. Yes, Yogini Prabhu, you have raised the hand. You have any queries? Yes, Yogini. Yogini, okay, no problem. If you don't have...
Okay, sir, continue, sir.
Okay. So it depends on the plant available water, that is rainfall, irrigation, land surface temperature, vegetation types, etc. Whether the vegetation is evergreen or deciduous. This kind of temporal information is required in such kind of areas. Then it also useful in the areas, as I told, in agriculture, like which had different crop cycles can be studied. Like for example, from planting to harvesting, for any kind of a crop, what kind of changes come up in the vegetation, that also can be studied as a phenological cycle. Then deciduous cycles are there, depend on seasonality of rainfall and temperature. So deciduous areas, we know that when the summer is there, the vegetation is dry, but soon as the rain falls, the vegetation turns green, and the peak comes around something like August to September or November, and after that it again tries to dry up. This kind of deciduous cycles can also be studied. So this is one of the examples which for used for a crop, using the Landsat multispectral data for different seasons. So you can see very nice slide it is. I borrowed from somewhere. I not given the source here, but usually I quote the source. So it is taken from one of the studies. I think one of the research paper it was taken up, which is not recently, it was published in 1980, something like that. So you see the turnip crop, you can see the different, and there is a band over here below. We have a different band. So how the vegetation changes, how the reflectance changes for different cycle of different crops. Cotton also similarly, you can see you have from January to April, you don't have anything in the field, so that's why the reflectance is almost dark and black. But as soon as there is the emergence of plant coming out, sprouting takes place from the cotton buds. So here the reflectance changes. When the ball setting takes place, it's almost peak red, bright red is there, and after boils opening and defoliation, again the reflectance reduces, and again the fields dry up, and something like that. So this is how the different crop cycles can be studied through the remote sensing data. This is also very good. This is another satellite data for the Rabi growing season for the India. This is shown over here. And if you see the bright red and which is smooth structure, that is all agriculture crops, and which is rough structure is all the forest area. So this is how the entire India can be looked into, how the crop cycle is there across the country. This is again the temporal data for a mustard and wheat crop. So you can see temporal differentiation easily can be detected for the different cropping cycle for both wheat and crop. Here I want to again go to a different type of study. We can also use such kind of data for habitat mapping of any kind of wildlife. For example, I'm trying to show you the habitat mapping for Great Indian Bustard, which is a very, very simple study. So I've taken a very simple study example because you can able to understand that. So at the left side, you can see the Great Indian Bustard, and the right side you can see the habitat. This is the habitat where the Great Indian Bustard is found. So normally what we have to do that in this habitat site suitability mapping, we have to identify those areas which categorize or which can be classified as habitat for this Great Indian Bustard. So we had to look for those kind of reflectance signature in our remote sensing imagery. Okay. So let us see. So what are the physical suitable attributes we are going to analyze from our remote sensing data for this kind of study? The first is the suitable slope. So suitable slope should be there. The suitable altitude should be there. Suitable land use should be there. Suitable soil should be there. Suitable distance from the roadside. isn't it? These are the areas we feel that if we qualify certain areas, certain requirement, we feel that the Great Indian Bustard should be living in this kind of habitat, isn't it? You can add number of different attributes. For simplification, we have used only 5 different attributes, but you can add more number of attributes to it. Trying to identify, you can narrow down still further, the habitat can be narrowed down. So we have used over here the SRTM data, Landsat TM 7 ATM data, which are 30-meter resolution. And also we have used the forest map of the forest division. We have the GPS locations, and also we have soil map also for this soil suitability. So this is how we did it. We actually processed the SRTM image data for the vegetation. We overlapped with this forest department map, and also we used the Landsat EM data. Yes, the Landsat EM data was for the vegetation, but SRTM image was data for the altitude, for the topography, or you can say generate the TM data, or DEM data. Then we also use the soil map. So we use this kind of analysis. So here from this vegetation data, we could identify the suitable land use. Then from this suitable altitude can be taken up for SRTM data. Suitable soil can be soil data. Distance from this can be taken up buffer analysis. So when we merge all these things together, then we find a suitable area for the Great Indian Bustard, isn't it? So basically what we have to do, we are using the simple GIS technique. What we are doing, we are overlapping the map over each other. So we are using the filter, all these 4 filters as I used, and there's overlapped each other. So where the common area is identified as a suitable area, isn't it? So it is very simple technique. You can use it for you. Similarly, we have used this site suitability for the mapping of pomegranate crop. So these are the area where we find that pomegranate is there. For example, orange area is currently not suitable. Then moderately suitable is the green area. Highly suitable area is shown in the red area. So why this suitability is there? Because there are certain requirements or attributes are available in those areas, geographical attributes and also geological attributes, which makes this area suitable for the pomegranate. And we use all the attributes, and we try to overlap or overlay all these attributes each other. So this is again the area we can use it for change detection studies. We also use change detection studies in our vegetation mapping. The demonstration which I have already shown you will be given to you by my student. Wasim is there. After immediately my session is over, he will start his demonstration. So he can give a hands-on experience demonstration. So for that, you should have a Saga software, which is an extension of QGIS. So you can use that Saga, and you can also use QGIS also, because the similar kind of instructions are there under QGIS and Saga. So this is how the change detection takes place. For example, if you see, this is a map which shows the how the conversions of forest lands are taken into agriculture, how the cultivation system have developed over the years, and this is how the system is there. So which shows the area which is where the net forest loss has occurred, where the current forest area has lost, whether there is any gain in the forest area, or the area is degraded and converted to dry land, something like that. So this is kind of view. These are global levels I'm just showing you. Such kind of change detection can be taken at local level also, which will be shown in your demonstration. So what is change detection? Basically, this is assessing or quantifying the difference between 2 or more images of the same area acquired at different times, and that's why it is called change detection. So you have for change, what you record two time level data, temporal level data. Like for example, if you take a data from 2001 and you can compare it after 10 years, 2012, 11, or maybe 2021 after 20 years. So you can have to check the same data, that is same imagery of the same imagery of the same area at the same time. If you're taking a data in the month of July, then you should have the 2021 data also in the month of July. So both the data should be of the same rhythm, same time, which we can do a comparison. So what basically change detection do with these two kind of data set? They undergo 4 processes. First is the detection, that is the discovery of the change, whether the changes occurred in that area when we compare the 2 imageries. And then second is the recognition, that is we have to recognize what kind of changes occurred. That means, is there any conversion of area to other area? something like that. So that is, we use the thematic classification of the image. So we call it classification system in this data processing. Then we have to identify the change. That is, we have to identify the change. That means we have to quantify. Then we have to quantify the measure of change. So this is the process. First, you have to detect the change. We have to recognize the change. You have to identify the change and then quantify the change. Okay, this is how the change detection principles works into. This is the one of the example of change detection which has occurred in Odisha. If you see, this change is not related to 10 years data, 15 years. It is a change immediate data. For example, there was a clear felling of sal forest in the Odisha for the domestic purpose timber. What change has occurred after the forest clearing took place? This is the kind of evidences which shows that yes, there is a forest clearing happened in that area. So this is another example which I'm trying to show you. It is how the change has taken place in the area where the there was infestation of call it biologically. It is kind of biological invasion study where the Euphorbia odoratorium is a kind of weed which are infested into the forest area, and you can see how far it has been infested. So light pink and the smooth tone in the forest area, which represent the more than 80% density of Euphorbia. So where all this area which is light pink and smooth texture, this is the area where this weed had invaded the area in the forest area. That's how it can be detected. So here the forest change is also the Amazon forest. So over the year 1970 to 1996, you can see how the change has taken place in the vegetation. Okay, so very beautifully it is described. So that's what I really always like this tool. Although nowadays I'm little far away from remote sensing GIS research. I'm doing more rural area development research related to implementation of government schemes, etc. But still I enjoy doing this kind of, see the beautiful, how beautifully the map has been produced over here. See how beautifully I detected the change over the years. Thank you very much. Thank you for your precious time. I'm open for you for any questions. I can devote 5 minutes more to you. Not more than that. I'm very sorry because I have another meeting to attend. And after my presentation is over, my student is there, Wasim. He will show you a hands-on experience or demonstration about the techniques which I used in this presentation. Yeah, any questions, please?
Dear participant, this session is open. Okay, actually half the session is done. Half session demonstration will be done by Wasim Bhagwan sir. Okay, and now sir has a meeting, so you can ask whatever question you have. Sir can give 5 minutes. Yes, question please. Okay, I think if there are questions, they can put on chat box. Okay, I think there is no question from their side right now. Okay. Okay, so on behalf of AICT Atal Academy, Department of Geography of our Parvatibai Chogle College, my staff members and my participant of this course, we are thankful to Dr. Ravindra Gavli sir for giving his time.
Hello,
And
sir.
sir is available. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
No, actually, sir, I was seeing in the WhatsApp group, Yogini Prabhu has some question to ask. Actually, he is, I think, unable to ask. That's why I'm telling you.
Okay. Okay. So should I check the mic because I have? Okay. Who is asking, sir?
Yogini Prabhu, sir.
Yogini Prabhu. So just Yogini, you are present, no? Hello, Yogini.
Yes.
So you ask your question, no? So you had
Yeah.
hand between. Okay.
Yeah. So regarding the different reflectance spectra of different types of trees, is there any reference spectra of cashew tree available?
Yes. There is reference spectra for each and every species. Okay. And if you use any kind of software, many of the software they have for common plants or common agriculture crops, they have one residence spectral signature available for comparison.
So where can I get this one, the cashew spectral signature?
In cashew, I think any kind of software, like for example, if you're using ADAS or maybe you're using NV, they have a spectral signature for all important crops. And
ADAS and NV. Okay.
yeah, in case if you don't have any spectral signature, okay.
Okay.
So how you will take the signature for any, for example, new crop or new plant is there. You don't know
Okay.
this signature is not available.
Hmm.
Then you should have a spectroradiometer.
Yeah.
You should have your own spectroradiometer, which is very costly basically, but you can hire it from any of the institutes. Now many of the institutes are buying this spectroradiometer. So it's a handheld spectroradiometer is there. You can take this handheld spectroradiometer. You can go to that area, take the spectral signature of that plant. Okay?
Yes.
And you can match that spectral signature with the image of that area.
Of course. Okay. So can you just spell the words ADAS and NV?
ERDAS, ERDAS. ERDAS and ENVI. N for national. ENVI. NV.
Yeah. And in fact, for open sources, there are many people in the open source community. If you have happened to join any group of open source community which are using the QGIS, okay. So in those community also, if you put up, somebody may able to give the file of spectral signature to you. Okay.
So where sir?
Any group, any open source software group which is using Quantum GIS, GRASS, etc.
Okay. Quantum GIS.
Yeah, Yogini, it's a very basic question. I thought it has been covered in the basic classes which took place in earlier.
But
understand
this.
Just for your understanding, observance is something which is observed by the plant leaf. Okay.
Yes.
And for example, take example why the plant leaf is green in color, because it absorbs the other colors and it reflects the green color.
Green color. Yes.
That's why in a visible spectrum, you see the reflected in the green color, isn't it? It is more. That's why we see the plant is green.
Yes.
But in the near infrared region and middle infrared region, the plant reflect something else, isn't it? So that is called reflectance. So we cannot study absorbance, isn't it? We have to study reflectance. We are studying that plant from a remote area. That is called remote sensing, no? Okay. So what we are remotely observing. If for example, I have to observe the watch hanging over here nearby me. So why I'm seeing this watch, because something is reflected from that watch. I am able to see that, isn't it? That's why I can see the watch. Okay. I hope you got it.
Yes, sir. Yes, I definitely got it.
So so in the special techniques, we are having some change detection techniques. Now, when we do the change detection, it is basically between the remote sensing based reflectance, and based on that we
Bhagwan sir.
first step. Hello
sir. Bhagwan sir.
हाँ सर.
थोड़ा आवाज कमी येतोय.
आता येतोय का सर?
मला येतोय. पार्टिसिपेंट्स ना बघायला पाहिजे कारण माझे लाउड स्पीकर आहे.
Okay. Participants, any of the participants, am I audible to all of you?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
sir. Completely audible.
Okay.
Now all please cooperate with him. Okay, he is demonstrating the thing. Okay, thank you, sir. Continue.
So here, 4 things are the main while detecting the change. That is first detection. It is the discovery of change. Okay. Now in the recognition, it is when we recognize the 2 thematic layers, we are going to classify what change has been taken place. Now in the third step, identification of the features. Now features, you can take anything like forest or expansion of the urban area. That is the identification of any particular feature. Okay. And quantification. Now in the quantification, we are doing in this case of the rate of change and the area. Now I'm giving you an example here. So this is one of the study carried out by Gabri sir and me. Here you can see that in Satara district in 1996 there was no dam construction in 1996. In the year 2016 they constructed a dam. So here, as I told you earlier, that is a detection of a feature. Here you can identify the water body feature, okay, and some changes of land occurred surrounding to the river channel. Okay, now this is the detection technique using the thematic layer. Okay, by using the supervised classification method in the GIS platform, we can do the preparation of the thematic maps. Okay, now and this is the quantification method. Okay, so here you can see that in the 1996 what was the area in square kilometer of agriculture, water body, barren land, settlement, and the forest area. Okay, and the percentage. And here now we by using the formula as mentioned on the screen, we can depict the rate of changes has taken place. Okay, now on the last column of this table on the screen, but it shows the annual change. Now annual change, we simply divide this C for the rate of change of the occurrence divided by the difference in the years taken for the study. Okay, suppose that here from 2016 to 1996 there is a difference of a 20 year. So we simply divide the area of the two periods and divided by 20. And this is the slide showing the what changes has been taken from previous area to the current position. Okay, I will tell you the demonstration for this also, but just giving the overview of what we are going to do. Now here it is also based on the Saga GIS software. Now this is the screenshot of Saga GIS software. Which step we can do to achieve the change detection using the thematic layers. Okay, now along with this, based on the quantification of the particular land use land cover, how we can predict the next probable area of particular land use land cover using the same layer. Okay, here I am giving you another example about the change. Look at, these are the three tables over here. Now in the first table, in the year 2013, what is the land use land cover was there is showing on the horizontal, and on the column side what was the land use land cover area in the 2019. Now based on this, we are going to compute the transition probability matrix. What is a transition probability? I am giving you, suppose that what is the probability of an agriculture area to shift into the agriculture. Okay, that is simply the probability. Now agriculture to barren land, agriculture to settlement, and agriculture to forest, and the whole is a probability 1. And based on this probability matrix and the table first and table 2, we can multiply by using the mmult function in the Excel to predict the what is the probable in the 2015 using the Markov chain. Okay, now I'm going to start the demonstration for this. You need to have Saga JS software, which is an open source software. You can download freely. For this, we need to take first the layers.
भगवान सर,
हाँ सर.
तुमची पीपीटीचा जे एंड स्लाइड आहे ना ती दिसते, ती बंद करावी लागेल, मग तुमचा QGIS विंडो दिसेल.
सर आता दिसते? सर, hello sir.
We can see a window. Yes, Saga. Now we can see.
येस सर, येस सर, विंडो आहे, तुम्ही या तिथं.
Okay.
ओके, सागा JS ची विंडो आहे.
हाँ आली ना. Okay. Now in this software, simply open, then go to open. Here, allocate your path. Here, we are going to take the supervised classification images of these 2 years, 2 different years. Okay, this is a thematic layer of Urumudi River watershed in the year 1996, and this is in the year 2016. Okay, now next step is go to geoprocessing, imagery, classification method, and in the classification, confusion matrix of 2 grids. Okay, so this is the toolpath. Now here what we need to do, we have to compute the histogram for this, and in the histogram just a minute. We need to classify first of all with the unique values. Okay, simply say okay. Okay, now here the legends are showing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. These are the class values. Then go to here and compute the.
Sir, your Saga JS window is not being shared.
दिखाई दे रहा है?
It's not being shared actually. Your window, Saga JS window is not being shared.
सर तुमची स्क्रीन नाही दिसत सर.
हाँ हाँ.
भगवान सर
हा.
स्क्रीन डिसअपियर झाले तुमचे. ये कन्वर्ट सिंग आ गया नया.
आता दिसतंय सर?
जस्ट हा आले.
आता दिसतंय का? Once again I am telling you. सर आता दिसतंय ना?
परत
सर,
गेली
दिसतंय?
सर. परत गेली.
परत गेली का?
हा. मी व्ह्यू मध्ये ना
हा.
टॉप कॉर्नरला व्ह्यू आहे ना,
हा.
स्पीकर आणि ते आहे ना, तिथं जाऊन तिथं हे करा, स्पीकर स्टँडर्ड करा.
बेसिक ऍडव्हान्स ऍम्प्लिफायर गेली तिथून.
नाही
काही सर काही दिसत नाही सर तिथं.
नाही नाही
व्ह्यू मध्ये जाऊन का?
परत एकदा स्क्रीन शेअर करा ना.
हा थांबा सर.
सिलेक्ट करा तुमचं कोणतं पेज आहे ते. तुमच्या स्क्रीनवरती सगळे ऑप्शन दिसतील. सो यू कॅन सिलेक्ट वन ऑफ दॅट विच इज दॅट व्हॉट यू वॉन्ट टू.
आता दिसते सर?
जस्ट वेट. हा इट्स कम.
Okay. So these are the, we are basically taking these two layers.
Sir, 1 minute. So what happens, you know, when you click outside of the screen, it is coming back to the camera. Okay, so that's why it is happening. So be there on that same screen.
Just a minute.
Again go back to
this.
this.
Yes. Just a minute, sir. Just a minute. Okay. Now is it clear, sir? Hello, sir. Hello,
Yes,
sir.
it is visible now.
Yes, visible.
Okay, now simple. Go here. Use classify. According to the classification method of unique values, you need to classify. Say okay. Also, you have to do this same procedure for the another layer. Classify unique values. Okay. Now after that, you have to go to histogram. Again, for this same histogram. So what it did basically, the one when you classify the layer using the supervised classification method, the digits shown here on the base, you know that this first layer is of agriculture. Second, you have given to the water body. Third, to barren land. Fourth, to settlement, and fifth, to the forest area. So you know the what legends and what are the layer name you are providing to each. After that, simply compute table. Second, again this compute. Okay. So here, can you see that this table has come with the computation of the area? Participants, anyone from? Do you see
Yes,
that?
yes.
Okay. Now here, we know that this is the on the second column. Area has shown in the 1/8 like. So here you can add one field with the name of a land use classes. So this first one is a agriculture. Second one is a water body. Third one is a barren land. Fourth is a settlement. And fifth is a forest. Please wait. Just wait, man. This is some technical issue. Okay. After that, you have to go to simply geoprocessing, imagery, classification of two grids. We have to select the grid. Then we have to here we have to go for sequentially 1996 extraction image. Then 1996 extraction histogram. Okay. The classification 2. Let us take supervisor classification 16 image, and it's a lookup table. Okay. Then after simply say okay. So on the screen, this is the final map. It's showing the changes taken place using the confusion matrix method. Okay. Now, when you click the confusion here, this is the 1996 class, and on the column wise, it is a 2016 class. It shows with the accuracy product. After that, in the summary, we can also find the capacitatics and overall accuracy occurred during the grid transformation or confusion grid method. Okay. Now, what you can do here in this graph, in this table, you see that this area of first agriculture is 183600. Simply divide it by 10 lakh to give area in the square kilometer. Okay. So this is the change detection method. Now based on this, we have published one paper. So here again, first what operation you need to do from, I'm telling you from the step one. When you download the data, it should be of, in the same season. It means that if you are taking the pre-monsoon, the next iteration must be from the pre-monsoon area. From my point of view, generally December to March, December to March, these are the period where we can find the cloud-free data. After that, perform the operations. If it is a geo-rectified, then there is no problem. Can you see the PDF file? Friends?
No.
No? Backward, sir? Is it now visible?
Yes.
Okay. So after that, you have to first do the rectification. After that, perform the false color composition. After that, false color composition, perform the supervised classification method technique. Use the maximum likelihood algorithm. Now, after using the maximum likelihood algorithm, you will get the thematic layer. Okay. So this is the example of the thematic layer. After that, perform the confusion matrix using the two-grid method. After performing that confusion matrix using two-grid method, you will get this map. And after that, you can compute the previous change and current situation using the technique. Do you have any queries regarding the change detection techniques? Anybody? Hello, from the participants? Hello? Anybody? Hello? From the backward sir? Backward sir, hello?
Hello. Hello.
Sir, display ka screen?
Screen is visible. I can see the Sega GIS window.
Okay. Now, after that, sometime anybody from the participant, do you have query regarding the confusion matrix or change detection technique? participants?
Good afternoon, sir.
Uh,
Sir, actually, I also performed, sir, this classification, sir, for one of my area using the random stratified classification in QGIS. I used the Sentinel image for that. But the problem was that, for example, if I took some samples, training samples for my evaluating for the validation of my classification. So when the accuracy report was generated, the parameters were not matching. For example, if I made 5 classes and took 20 samples each, so the 20 samples each were not as such. They were wrongly being written as 15, 5, something like that. But the aggregate of that was coming same. So could you please tell me what could have been wrong in that case?
I think you need to increase the sample size. If you
Sample
increase the
size
sample
was
size,
around 600. The total sample size was coming correct. However, if I have appropriated for class 1, if I have given 100 samples, then when the accuracy report was generated, then it was not showing 100 samples for that sample, for that particular class. It was showing something else. However, the total summation of that samples were correct.
I think it is.
Mehra sir, can you put on your camera? Mehra sir, can you put on your camera? Yes, sir. Shubham, can you help? He's asking about confusion matrix. Actually, sir, the thing is, when you have the sample data and you want to match with the classified data, so it depends on how accurately you have classified it. You may be having a sample of that same area while before the classification, but after classification also, the system work on the pixel level. Okay, so in that case, the brightness of pixel, then other bands that are used in combination for the color composite, all that makes difference. And at the end, what happens, the system will classify some data which is not expected by you. Okay, so in that case, the pixels that you have classified and the samples you are assigned, that will match, and some will be going in the wrong place. Okay, so that is called as a confusion. Okay, so that is why we actually do the confusion matrix. So in that case, the accurate samples will be remaining in the accurate column and row, and others will be splitted or distributed over the places where they are gone by chance.
Yes, sir, that I get what the confusion matrix is about, but the problem is something else, sir. Actually, for example, if I have taken samples for a particular class for 10, so in the accuracy report, when the confusion matrix is being displayed by QGIS automatically, it should also show 10 samples. But in my accuracy assessment report, it's showing 8 samples or something like that. So it's different from what the input parameters I have chosen.
Sample data, special reference may not be matching with that. So, sir, when you are putting the sample data, are they spatially referenced or they're just a pixel based?
No, sir, they are referenced only, sir. Actually, I'm using random stratified sampling in QGIS, which is basically in SCP plugin there, semi-automatic classification plugin by Luca.
Okay, so then in that case, you need to verify it.
Actually,
what we say, I think iteration is possible. No? Iteration you can try, or if it is spatial reference samples, then you need to check the coordinates of that particular point. If it is spatial reference, if it is automatically generated, then verification is required.
Yes, sir. Sir, that I have checked, but there was some issue with that. So I was not getting actually, because it is coming only for Sentinel data. Otherwise, if I'm using Landsat OLI and enhanced thematic mapper satellite image, then it's not showing.
चला चला जरा सांगते आन्सर. ओके भगवान सर कंटिन्यू.
नाव सर आता चेंज डिटेक्शन मध्ये कोणाला काही अडचण आहे का?
मेरा सर, okay, with free time we can discuss on this, and I will try to collect other peoples on the forum someday.
Yes.
Okay, if possible in the course time also it will be okay. Otherwise you can also be in contact with us, so we'll try to help.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Now next, as sir told me to how to compute the enhance NDVI and SAVI in the Saga. So here simply, sir, is it visible, sir? Screen visible? Sir, backward, sir?
Yes, yes.
Yes sir.
Okay. Simply go to the particular bands. We know that NDVI is simply the NR minus red and NR plus red.
43 झाले मॅडम, लवकर निघा तुम्ही.
Using please
हो,
take
43 झाले. तुम्ही लवकर येता ना? निघा लवकर मग तुम्ही लवकर निघू शकता.
After that, geoprocessing, imagery, then vegetation indices, then choose the option slope based vegetation indices, and simply assign the red and blue band here. So NIR is the 5th band, red is the 4th band. Now we can create the SAVI also and NDVI also. Simply okay. So here is our NDVI map is created. Always remember that the NDVI map legend ranges between the -1 to +1. It does not go beyond it. So here we are having the highest value is 0.36 and lowest -0.12. So it means that here you can also see that the basics, the size and all number of cell pixel size of the NDVI layer. Now just take SAVI. Now the value of the SAVI can be vary, but it also does not go rather unlike the NDVI, the value of SAVI can be changed. Now if we want to compute the EVI, we can also do the same operation using the grid.
Sir, is this the Western Ghats region?
Yes.
Okay.
Right.
This is Western Ghat area.
Ratnagiri, Satara districts.
Western Ghat area. And
So
this you can see the Koyna Dam is there, no?
Yes.
Portion is Koyna Dam, the bigger one. This is the central one. This is Koyna and this is Konkan region. This is Satara. Borobar.
Konkan Satara region. So value of the SAVI can also be changed, but NDVI value ranges between the -1 to +1. This is the main thing. We have to just put or give the band. One of the important feature of the Saga GIS software is that here we can this software does the atmospheric correction of the Landsat band. Simply put, simply go from imagery to the Landsat and to the top of atmospheric reflection. Put all the band here and simply say OK. It will give you the clear band without any kind of error. And after computation of this TOA, you can go for the computation of the vegetation indices. Okay. After that, we are going to see how we can do the buffer analysis in the Saga software. So buffer analysis is basically required for the habitat suitability modeling. So in the habitat suitability, we generally do the features like a river, like any forest area, any forest polygon. This is the basic of the buffer analysis. So how to do the buffer analysis? Suppose we are taking here the water body. So this is the water body zone, and if you are taking if you want to add some polygons surrounding to the any shape, so go to geoprocessing. Here you can search for the buffer tool, shapes buffer, choose the feature and its ID. Also, we have to give the scaling factor. Now here, before we need to think about if it is a geo-rectified and project raster image, we have to put this scaling factor for an attribute in the meter. If you put here 1000 meter and simply say OK. Some error is there.
So maybe we have to increase the transparency. Some error is occurring. So shapes buffer is the tool. Please remember, it will give you the buffer surrounding to your shape. It may be a point, line, or a polygon. This tool will help you to find a suitable site surrounding to any feature. And predicted the